Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about us at officehours.global. If you are interested in media, virtual production, education, all of those things, we're talking about those in the first hour. Second hour is we talk a little bit more about something that we're more interested in or specifically interested in, not more interested in. And today will be education. We don't put that on YouTube so that we can have kind of a more free and frank conversation. So stay tuned for that at 8 o'clock. And then we'll come back at 10. Kind of do a lab of Keynote. There's a couple things that we left open. We showed Keynote over the last couple of weeks, but we left a couple things, and I think that we were just brainstorming, and that seemed to be a lot of fun. So we're just going to do that at 10 o'clock and talk about a couple last little bits. So we will be bringing that back up on YouTube, so you'll see that there. All right. I'm going to hand it off to our host for the day, Emily Russo.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. I just wanted to mention up at the top, we have we are light on questions today. So you as our audience, write your questions to us in Mukana, and we vote on them. You vote on them, and then we answer them in the order that you vote on. So stuff that you're interested in, questions you have for us specifically or in general about production or anything that you want to ask about, please feel free to put that in the Mukana. All right, so we're going to jump into our first question today.
Thank you, Emily. Vincent Alvarez from Bellingham wants to know, and I love this question, I want to make a 10-second 70s-style radio call letter jingle as attention getter over PA at work, a la WKRP in Cincinnati. What software would you use? Is there a place online that has examples of those sing-songy, catchy musical jingles?
Mitchell.
Well, there's a good company that does record them and is one of the few that have remained after many, many years of different companies like PAMS and TM Productions, and they're called Jam Creative Productions. The gentleman's name is John Wolfert, who's been around a long time. In fact, he has a show on the weekends called Rewind Radio, so you can hear a bunch of old jingles. But if you go to jingles.com, you can probably peruse a very large library of pre-sung jingles for other stations. Maybe one of those is one that you could use, in which case I'm sure John could work some kind of deal out on you. But generally, a custom sung jingle is going to cost you somewhere between $100 and $200. So it's not a cheap. And don't try to do it yourself, because I've had so many people try and it just sounds horrible. You need those people that sing so well in Dallas, Texas.
TJ?
I recall there was a musician out of Nashville, who was doing jingles for various podcasts to introduce hosts. And I remember many of the Twit shows had various little jingles for introduction of the participants in there. And I have not been able to find his name, but I was pretty sure he was a Nashville musician that was doing it.
I'll have to check out the Nashville boards, get back to you guys. All right, next question.
Jonas Adele from Stuttgart. Update from my BMD Constellation saga. As soon as we switched to level A, we were in Rec 709. But as soon as we switched back to level B, we only get Rec 2020. Maybe that's to solve for your issue as well, Alex.
Alex?
Yeah, only if you promise. Like we didn't realize that we tried that before, and in an earlier version, it wasn't stable. So it would stay in Rec 2020, and then if we put a Rec 709 signal into it, it would switch down to 709. And so we've kind of gone back and forth on that. So if an update may have solidified it as A or B, that can be a little problematic if you have only, it works perfectly if your entire pipeline is Rec 2020 or Blackmagic. So if you have anything other than Blackmagic that you want to be Rec 2020, that might be more complicated, or you have to convert it to SDIB. And for those listening, SDIB is we joked it's Blackmagic. So back when 4K started, and when they wanted to upgrade SDI to doing a lot of progressive and so on and so forth, they basically, the format wasn't done yet, so they made their own. So they have their own protocol that no one else uses, which is called SDIB, and then SDIA is what everybody uses, satellite trucks and everything else. And so sometimes you need to be very careful. So I'm going to test that further. I'm kind of excited that it would be stable. If it forces it, that's great for me. I know it might not be good for you. For me, it's great.
John?
Alex, I thought that Rec 2020 had a larger gamut area than 709 did. I don't understand the difference.
Well, it's not technically. Yeah, it's the problem is that it's got different curve. So it's gonna expect an HDR curve. So it's a larger gamut, but it also has a curve that accounts for that. So if you're in the Rec 20, typically you're not just in Rec 2020. You're in a HDR 10 or HDLG and so on and so forth, going through those. And so, but a Rec 2020 is going to be larger, but it's not going to look the same. And so if you're, one's linear and one is not. And so, that's why you're going to have some issues.
And Mitchell. Oh, we can't hear you.
But Alex, does the Constellation have the same problem as the ATEM Extreme on channel 1, trying to zoom in on what it does not?
No, the Constellation doesn't treat any of the SDI signals any differently from each other.
All right, next question.
Next question up from Matt Cool of Montreal, Quebec, Canada. I'm working on building a remote-controlled studio in a corporate head office. They've given us a 12-foot by 16-foot room and want to be able to have 2 talking heads. I'm looking for PTZ camera suggestions that I can control remotely.
Alex.
Generally, you can find a way to control any PTZ remotely. So, I mean, that's, they have some kind of, whether it's Visca or IP, or I would try to stick with IP. It's just simpler than the other formats, in my opinion. The one that I'm most interested in that I haven't tested is the $5,000 Canon 1-inch sensor PTZ. I'm super fascinated with that one. Looks like it has a lot of color control. It doesn't look like it's too expensive. The ones that we've used the most are the BRC. Well, we use the BRC 900s, but the BRC 1000s, the Sonys. I think that those are worth looking at. They're 1-inch sensor as well, 4K, and we found them to work really well. I know a lot of people that use the Panasonic 150s because they have telemetry, so they'll send their stuff back for a virtual set. And then what we used in our studio were Blackmagic cameras with Cabrillo lenses and telemetrics heads. So if you really want to pull all the stops out, that's three of those cameras will cost you $100,000. 3 of those setups will cost you $100,000. So it just depends on but it looks, pretty.
It looks pretty. It justifies the cost.
Oh, yeah.
Guy?
Yeah, it just depends on, like Alex was saying, how you want to control them. So Visco over IP will most likely be the way to go. Like for Belfast method, we're using a universe show control because Panasonic has some of those hooks. So Panasonic has like its own language for accessing some of the various controls. And that's already in universe. So they're working on other manufacturers' controls as well. So they found that the smoothness of being able to do the diagonals and things like that remotely. So they're actually VPNing into Manolo's workstation, which he's VPN directly into Belfast, and then other people are controlling. There was an episode where he talks about it. But as far as models, like Alex said, the Canon, that's $5,000. The UE150 is $10,000. So it just depends on how much you want to spend, how many cameras you want, and then whether or not you're going to be working with NDI. Because I was noticing yesterday in some pricing, there's different manufacturers. When you take out the NDI, that saves you a couple $100. So if you are using like a Constellation or something like that, why pay extra for NDI unless you're trying to future-proof? So some churches, house worships, they have a limited budget and they don't want to spend the extra money. They would rather have 3 cameras instead of 2 cameras with NDI because they're using, like our church is using SDI right now. And so it doesn't make sense to pay for the NDI. So be aware of those things. And then there are IR controllers. Like I have this global cache, little $99 device that will allow you to take IP and take IR and convert it to IP. So if you even have some models that just have the remote control to do the pan tilt zoom stuff, you can still control it, but you have to, when you push the button on the remote control, it'll learn the hexadecimal code, and then you can transport that and shoot it at the other end. So it's almost like having the remote, so you can be at your house firing off these commands at the facility, and it's like it's there. So it's just like an IR blaster. So a couple things to take note of.
Cool. All right, let's move on to our next question.
Ike Potter from Hanover, Germany says, hooray and yippee-ki-yay. After waiting 8 long weeks for an appropriate MacMini M1 model to appear on refurb-tracker, I was able to order one an hour ago. What is the first I should do on arrival, i.e. go back to Big Sur?
Alex?
I would. The problem is I'm testing things that I need Monterey, but what I will say is after the last update, Monterey has gotten significantly better. It's still a little bit messy on my end, and I can't quite figure out all the things that are broken in it. I think the reality is, if it's already got Monterey on it, make sure that you're up to date. I probably would. I don't know if I would go back. Now that I said that, I wouldn't have updated. I'll never update again in the first 6 months. Like unless it's just a test machine. What I always did in the past was a test machine, and what I got excited about was Monterey for Keynote, and I just wish I had gone ahead and stuck with one computer that had it or something rather than all of them. So it's been a rough 6 months in Monterey. Just lots of subsystems that are really slow and buggy. And it has to do with a lot of other people not updating their code. It's not Apple's fault per se. It's really how it's interfacing. I mean, although there are some Apple fixes that have the last update, my iCal used to take 20 seconds to change pages. Like literally every time you went to a new page, it would take 20 seconds for it to load Exchange. And as soon as I updated the last time, it's instant. So it's getting better. So it's on the precipice. I think you have to decide if there's something that you really want, but you can't use the new Keynote without Monterey, I believe. So you do need that.
All right, next question.
And it comes from Rupert McRae of Dallas, Texas, USA. Any more recent experiences with Starlink? I think that's fired at you, Alex.
Yeah, no experience yet. It's still sitting in the box. It came during a work day, and I had work to do. So I didn't stop everything and started to play with it. I will play with it this weekend. I think that we will most likely do after hours or extend office hours tomorrow or something and do a unboxing. I feel like that'd be kind of fun. So we might do it just to unbox it and try to put it together and try to figure it all out. So I think I've never done an unboxing, so I have to think about where to put cameras and stuff like that. But we'll kind of excited. We'll see how it goes.
I don't think you have anyone who could help you with that at all.
Yeah, exactly.
John?
One of our community members had one in after hours one night. We were playing with it, and we were doing recursive pings, and it would drop. It would drop for like 8 or 9 pings in a row, and then it would come back online. The latency was better than I thought it was going to be, but the dropping of the packets was just super significant. We couldn't get it to work well on Zoom. It would start and then stop and start and stop.
That's the Zoom thing is what I'm actually trying to figure out, whether you can actually run, join. So I'll of course join as soon as I have it in after hours, and we'll just see how it looks. That's the primary reason I got it, was to know whether can we take something on the road and do a Zoom, from somewhere out there. But I'm pretty certain I can stream with it if I give it enough buffer. It's just a matter of buffering out.
All right, next question.
From Guy Cochran in Seattle, USA. Thoughts on the Newtek Tricaster?
Alex?
Yeah, I've had about 10 or 12 like truly catastrophic events that just really went badly, and Tricaster's been in the center of like a quarter of them. The percentage, and I've only used it for like I've only had about out of the 6 or 7 events that I've done with the Tricaster on our kit. Now we installed a Tricaster into a studio as well. The biggest problem was the crashing. That was the biggest thing. The crashing during your event is really not super great. And before your event, while the President of the United States walks into the room, super stressful. And so anyway, Obama's getting like set up, and I'm sitting there going like this to our audio, our A1, while the TriCast operator is restarting the TriCaster. Not that I'm bitter. And I spent the whole week saying we shouldn't use it. So it was kind of like it was. So I just kind of shrugged. But the biggest problem that we have is really just general sluggishness. Like it's not. Sync doesn't always work. The playback doesn't always, most TriCasters that are used in heavy like broadcasts, I talk to folks and they almost always stop using the playback. Like they go to external playback. They just cut with it. They've got a couple when you start asking it to do all the things that it says it can do, if you ask too many of those things, it either crashes or it starts to slow down, and it does it in real subtle ways that make it give me pause, and that's the experience. And we had it in a studio, and it didn't crash after the first couple weeks. It was crashing a lot, and then it settled in, but the playback never really worked, and the sync never stayed on, and it just had a lot of like little glitches in a way that you couldn't quite put your finger on it, but it just wasn't a great experience. And so I think that's my biggest thing, is just that it's not just the crashing, it's the general kind of, I don't know, weirdness that has it. It just all feels like everyone cut corners in weird places, throughout the entire machine. And so I think that if I was going to choose between the two, between TriCasters and vMix, I'd rather build my own machine and use vMix on it than use TriCaster.
John?
So, Guy, are you studying to be an attorney? Because you already know the answer to this question. So I look forward to hearing from Doug. Doug and I have the same unit.
It's what we call it direct, before the cross. Yeah, because the cross would be, isn't it true that?
So I have the TC1. Doug Ferguson has the TC1. I've had the original SD1 and the 460 and the TC1, and exactly what Alec just said. It's crashed in the middle of the show multiple times on me. Right now it's in a studio, and we only use it for 2 podcasts a week, and for that it seems okay. Yeah, the least amount of stuff you can do on the TriCaster during the show, the better. So Doug has more color to add later in this question.
John?
I have, I think, 3 TriCasters that we use. Definitely a lot of hardware issues, reliability problems that we're moving more and more away. Surprisingly, our live stream appliances have been more reliable than the TriCaster.
Doug?
Yeah, so what Alex said and John said, I mean, we've experienced that too. I've owned the 460 and the TC1. And I tell you, the feeling in your gut when you're in the middle of a show and then stuff stops working and you have no fix, you know, and the only fix that we've really like done is you have to reboot the thing, but you can't do that when you're live. And so I have literally built and bought equipment to put in our truck that does the things that the TriCaster is supposed to do. And so we don't ever let it record. We have Blackmagic HyperDecks. We don't ever let it stream. We have a Wowza Clearcaster to do that. You know, we don't let it do what it's supposed to do. And then it still struggles. I was doing a graduation where I was just hitting the take button when they were reading the names. I mean, the cameras were locked down. I was just going from camera 2 to camera 3. The take button stopped working during the show. I had to finish the show with a mouse and just click. I mean, Alex and I had a conversation a long time ago. And it's like the NDI part of the TriCaster, like it really is cool. And, you know, you're on a network and you can send your signal, you know, anywhere, or anybody that has a laptop that wants to watch the show can do that. But, you know, in our situation, we're setting up and turning down in different locations all the time. You know, a TriCaster might be good in a high school setting where it's in a studio, doesn't move, doesn't change ever, you know, but the second that you throw different things at it, like it just becomes unreliable. And I mean, we have just had nightmares with the thing. And I literally got a quote yesterday for a new ROS system. And it is a big buy once, cry once, but I think that's what we need to do. I mean, I can't do a show and have that feeling in my gut, like, is this going to work? You know, the next couple questions is, you know, I'm a professional and I can't have the equipment fail on me. You know, human error is human error, but when the equipment fails, I have no regard for that.
Guy?
Yeah, it's interesting to hear everybody's differing opinions. I'm just wondering what the new stuff, because I know we have a lot of legacy opinions and things that have happened in the past. And I'm going through some of the training right now, and it looks so fancy, you know, but it's like, what's the reality of the current stuff? You know, I understand the minis, and they made some mistake with some of the form factors and trying to put too much with inadequate power. So yeah, you're right. I would never ask one of the older Tricasters to stream and record as well as cut, because it's a Windows box at the end of the day. And so there's better stuff out there. And I think that's why a lot of people went to vMix, and even Wirecast is starting to make a little bit of a comeback. So I just wanted to hear everybody's thoughts and opinions as to what's out there. And it kind of reiterates our love for the Blackmagic stuff that just works. I mean, we're not hearing a bunch of people. Well, actually, we were hearing John Pewitt said he had some RMA issues. So I guess nothing's perfect, but it's just that if you're a professional, I want to hear what people are using and what you recommend, because, you know, if you're a high school, it's fine, like Doug was saying. But yeah, what at the end of the day, because we can't all get Ross carbonites. You know, I'd love to get. I'm guessing that's 50, 100 grand, somewhere in there. So a 295 ATEM Mini might be right for me right now.
Alex?
Well, it starts to make the Constellation look a lot less expensive. I mean, the big thing is that what the big advantage that I had going in, I had a 4K trailer that I used to own, and I had 2 4K switchers, you know, that were there. And actually we ended up with 3. So we had 3 4K switchers sitting in there. This was when we had the 4MEs or whatever, before the Constellations. But I can do a lot. I mean, like 3 Constellations, that's what we have in the office. That is a lot of I/O. So being able to do a lot of things at an event. And yes, basically what you're doing is externalizing most of your playback, most of your stuff. But we've done we even feed one switcher into the other to give us more super sources and more. We had a client that wanted mortises, but they wanted them to animate. So to do that, we had to, we used one switcher to build all the mortises for everybody for the super sources, fed those all back into the other Constellation, and then had use Mix Effect Pro to animate between them all and everything else, and it looked really cool. And yeah, that seems kind of wonky, but it's still $20,000 for 80 inputs and 48 outputs, and so I think that's for us, that the other thing is that I tend to want to look at the trajectory of a company, and I just feel like Blackmagic's moving pretty quickly, it just has a way more mass and way more focus. So I think that's the thing, but it all comes down to when I look at a TC1, which is like 40 grand, right? Is that about right? About $40,000, is it?
It's 20 grand right now.
25 is what I.
25.
Yeah.
But I could have 2 Constellations or one. I would have 2 Constellations, a primary and a backup, or a main and auxiliary. Before, I'd much rather have that than one machine that is notorious for going down. So that's I think that's the real problem.
All right, next question.
TJ Asher, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Dante video? How? Where? Why? Guy?
Guy?
So I saw some news that one of these things came available, and so this is it hooked up. I asked for a loaner, and they sent it on over. So now, if you're familiar with Dante Audio, you could see I got a couple of Avios. You might have got these little devices that will allow you to convert, XLR to Ethernet. Essentially, is what the Dante protocol is doing. So nowadays, though, with the video side, we have a transmitter, which is this D220 camera. So if I spin this open, you can see that we now have HDMI. So the way this works is there's a camera, which is the transmitter, and then there's a receiver, which is this D210. And so it's receiving the HDMI. So now if I cut over to, this is the actual camera. So it's behind me. Let me actually point to it so you can see it. That's the camera right there. So this is about a $2,700 camera. It's a 12x PTZ or 20x, can't remember. But then it's power over Ethernet, and it's power over Ethernet plus. So my Ubiquiti switch actually didn't have enough power to drive it, so I had to actually plug it in. So if you're looking at switches, you want to keep that in mind, not just for this camera, but some of the other bigger PTZs. And so there's a decoder box, which looks like, let me see if I can get to it. And this is the other piece of the puzzle. So, you're basically taking Ethernet, Cat5, and you're, come on, go over to here. Go. There it is. That's the decoder box. You're taking Cat 5 and you're running it into the back. So if you already have like a house of worship or a school, you're basically just running it, through your switch, and it's plugging into this. And then I've got HDMI out of this, and then right now it's going into my Blackmagic. So it's not like what you would think. It's not like NDI where you just open up Wirecast and up appears those sources. So in the future, that's my feedback to them right now, and I'm sure they're well on their way in the development. But I want it to pop up as a source in Wirecast, vMix, Mimo Live. But right now, it doesn't do that. So let's not be confused on that spot. So what's the benefit? The benefit is that it's super fast and super high quality color. So the color's 444 if you crank it up, 10-bit all the way up to 12-bit, and then the latency. So if you want to drive an LED video wall behind somebody, or you're doing IMAG and somebody's on the stage and you want their lips to be perfectly in sync, that's what they're pushing this towards. So for a normal person, I don't know if it's the right tool, but I just want to kind of give you guys the introduction as to what's out on the market. And maybe this will go head to head with NDI in the future, but right now it is what it is. Or 2110 would be the next form, SMT 2110. But this is a contender. So if you have any more questions, reach me in office hours and we can play with it.
Alex?
I'm interested in it. It's a really interesting thing. And the real question is whether they can get enough people in the market to support it. I think that a lot of people have become a little crusty about the licensing and the chips and everything else. But the thing, so I think that that's the issue, is whether people want it to succeed. I think that Audinate has had that issue, and getting market support. I mean, I think if this came out 3 or 4 years ago, it'd be huge. I think it's a little late because NDI has made huge inroads, and 2110 is much closer. So I think that timing could be a little challenging, but it does, the ease of use of it, of how it's set up, looks really interesting.
All right, next question.
Rupert McRae of Dallas, Texas. What is your definition of professional?
Ooh, good one. TJ.
I would say that I have two. One is doing what you say you are going to do. If you say you're going to do it, follow through and actually do it. And secondly, if you are doing work for money, for pay, then making sure that your customer is satisfied with the work you are performing for them.
Lois.
So the actual definition that I've always heard is you get paid for the work you do. And that is, if you're a professional artist, it means that somebody's buying your stuff. And so from that point of view, the fact that people are willing to pay you makes you professional. But then in the term that we usually use it, being professional means being responsible so that the people who are paying you get their money's worth.
Mitchell?
One of my favorite skill sets says a professional is being able to see 30 minutes into the future. That's as good as it gets for me.
Interesting. All right, next question.
Next question from A. Mitchells of Washington. Yesterday's session on DAM and dailies workflows, etc., was amazing. What other people learned from this? Thanks.
We got no hands, and I wasn't here yesterday. Oh, here we go. TJ.
I didn't see the session yesterday, but I will just briefly say that I like the 3-2-1 rule for any of my assets. 3 copies, 2 unique storage formats, and 1 offsite.
Cool. All right. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Mike Beardmore, Reading, UK. UK theater arts community are experimenting with real actors and virtual stage sets via, and they have a link there, in 2D screens and 3D VR XR. Is this the future for some theaters?
Alex.
I think there's a lot possible with it. It looks like they do. I'm just kind of looking at the stuff that they have, and they seem to be very interested in kind of metaverse type things. I actually don't see any physical folks on it. It looks like it's all real actors and virtual, and well, it looks like it's all virtual. So, but maybe you're seeing something that I'm not. As far as using real actors motion captured into virtual, we played with that for a long time. I don't think it's going to be as popular as people think. So I think that if you're looking for the meat of the market, I think video with someone in front of a virtual stage, I think does is something that's possible, like what you see with Mandalorian, but with presentations. And we've worked on those in the past. The real issue is moire. Moire and compression artifacts are the real problem with the screens. But if you can get past that, which you can at under a millimeter of pitch, you can start to do some really interesting things.
Cool. All right. Next question.
And it comes from us from our very own Tony Mobley of Noonan, Georgia. If you're streaming from Zoom to YouTube, do you have to be the owner of the Zoom account to do it?
John?
You don't have to be the owner, but if the owner has to allow you to do it, at least in my experience with setting it up.
Guy?
Is that not true, Guy?
Yeah, there's two different kinds of accounts. I think it's business and then personal or something like that. I had the same issue with the Zoom test kitchen. I went in to fire up the stream and it connected to, even though he made me a manager on the account, I couldn't stream. It wound up going to my personal account, and I was like, what in the world? So it is a gotcha. You want to definitely test because, yeah, there's a difference. And I think Alex has the same issue with the account that we're on.
I have to, because mine's a personal account on YouTube. It's old. It's been there for a long time. And so I can't, Jeffrey, I don't think can start up a live stream on my account. But if you have a business account, you can assign lots of people to be able to use it.
Rupert?
So I think the question was specifically about the permissions in Zoom rather than the YouTube permissions. Even on a personal level, or even on a single account in Zoom, like a single paid professional account, you'll have the permissions for the user account and then the overall permissions for the account as a whole, even if you only have one login. So there's sometimes two places where you may need to enable the streaming at the top level and then maybe at the user level, even if you have one account in Zoom.
Alex?
Yeah, and I do believe that you do need to, you have to, as Rupert said, you have to assign it. But you have to be, when you do the Zoom account, maybe Rupert said this, it didn't quite click in for me. When I hit it, I have to be able to log into you're going to get an interface where you have to log into your YouTube, and you have to be the owner of that YouTube. Now, you don't have to, anybody can do that, but they have to pop in and then they have to have access to the YouTube page. And I have like a long list of YouTube channels. And so I have to kind of pick the one that I'm going to stream to, which I've occasionally picked wrong, but yeah.
Guy?
Yeah, as Alex was saying, it'll pop up with the login, and if you don't have those credentials, you won't be able to push, as you say, in Zoom to stream to YouTube, but you can go custom RTMP. So if you want to disconnect the account and not use the API, then you can go and push it in. Anybody can push that in if they have the streaming credentials. So that's a workaround if you can get into the account still. But some people don't want their personal account password because a lot of times that's two-factor authentication. So just be aware and do some test runs first, because it's definitely a gotcha. I'm sure there's going to be lots of people who get, because I even got stuck with it. I'm sitting there starting the show and they're like, hey, Guy, it's not streaming to the Zoom test. It's going to your personal. It's like, what? So be aware.
All right. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Mike Beardmore of Reading, UK. VRChat.com supports 3D spatialized audio. Is this compatible with the Apple version?
Alex?
I think with a lot of these, they're going to use some version of binaural, or that's going to be one of the output options. And so that should work with anything, because it's still just it won't work with speakers necessarily. But if you have headphones on, which is most of the people that are going to use a VR system are going to have headphones on, it is going to spatialize the information into the headphones, and it should give you the sense of immersive audio, spatial audio.
Cool. All right. Next question.
Tex Whitney from Sydney, Australia. Looking for new SSDs to hang off my Blackmagic 6K. My go-to T5s are now hard to find. Has anyone been using NVMe successfully on the BMD cameras?
John?
I haven't used that particular drive, but I have noticed that at least stateside, the Blackmagic Samsung T5s have been back in stock more frequently. What I do, at least for my own personal uses, I keep the T5 2 gigabyte drive in my wish list on Amazon, and it will notify me as soon as it comes back into stock. And that helps me keep an eye on it. And it's been in stock for the last month or so. So you might want to check at other suppliers than your normal ones.
TJ?
Been doing some research on this morning. The T5 drives are not available from the Samsung website in Australia, but they are available via Amazon Australia. So however I know there's a little variance of trying to get stuff from Amazon Australia, but they are available on the Amazon Australia website.
Alex?
Yeah, I have lots and lots and lots of T5s, but when I need real speed, I have to go to NVMe's. And so this is the INEO. This is one little one. This is a larger one that has a fan actually on it. So I build these. So you buy the enclosure for $25. You buy the NVMe, and then then you put them together. It's a little tricky the first time you put them together, and then after a while you get used to it and you build them all the time. So, and this one's nice. It's got like a little rail. It's got a rail system, which is kind of funny to have on a hard drive. Anyway.
All right, next question.
Next question comes from you, Emily Russo from Nashville, Tennessee. Anyone surprised by Adele's postponement of her Vegas residency? New normal?
John?
Not really surprised. When you look at the reasons between COVID and supply chain, I think we've all been talking about that for a long time now. It comes down to how much can we really prepare and can we really get ahead of it? Like most of the stories are people spent, life savings to come out and see this show. And then, for the opening, and then they can't participate in it. How do we get ahead of that? Communicate that more earlier.
Interesting. John?
I'm actually surprised that shows are going on right now, more so than people are canceling. I think that it's, from a personal standpoint, it's highly irresponsible to have these events and go to these events. I know we're all tired of staying home and not getting out and going to these events, but let's try to push for more virtual events and more virtual event spaces, and then we wouldn't have to cancel them.
John Preto.
CES was highly irresponsible. Shapiro is out of his mind. I'm looking at the numbers for this week. We're the highest we've ever been by far, and the numbers are through the roof right now. About 40% of the shows are still open, and we've got a ton of kids coming from California and Arizona at the hotel still. So the strip's busy right now.
Yeah, no, I've seen that on the social media side of things, as far as like people still vacationing, and like I look at age groups, and it's really funny because to me it seems like it's the people who are like slightly younger than me who have money to do things, and they're just like, we're going to live our lives and do what we need to do. And then slightly older than me who I think are like recently retired and are tired because they want, this is not how they envision their retirement. So I was thinking about the situation with Adele, and I was like, well, what could we create virtually that would create that same kind of like exclusivity of like going to a Vegas opening show that would still make the people feel like it's worth paying those kind of prices, or the like what has to happen. And like I don't know what that is. I think VR has to really get to a place where it really makes you feel like you're there or something. I don't know. Alex?
Yeah, if you do some searching on Twitter, I think you can find a video of transmitting I've mentioned this before, but Kanye concert to theaters, to IMAX theaters. A lot of people had a good time, or appears to be, on that video. So, I think that the big advantage of, venue to venue in general is the potential that you could be in a very good place and all, be able to see everything. Any of us have gone to a concert in an arena. Unless you got a lot of money, you are way, way away from the artist. And that's what these residencies actually give you, is that because they're there all the time, they have a smaller number of seats and you get a much better view of the artist. But if they're on tour, the experience is pretty low. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity to create some great experiences, both in theaters and at home, with a new kind of approach to concerts.
Yeah, I was just thinking the intimacy of like the smaller Vegas shows could be recreated in a sense of like if she does the show weekend, twice a week, that she was going to do before, but the group's smaller and she interacts with the audience in a way that makes them feel like I'm seen, I think you'd have more,
imagine something where it feels like you had an LED wall and it feels like you're right in front of her, and then she's, but she can look at you and talk to you, with the right, over Zoom or maybe something better.
Right.
There's things like the switch would let you interact and, literally it'd be as if you were in row 20. That'd be the latency between the person sitting in there. And so there's I think it's going to be a really interesting moment. There's a lot of challenges that we're dealing with. It's never been better to be a creator, whether it's a musician or a video creator or anything else. This is the moment, it's the next decade is going to be super exciting.
Interesting. All right. Next question.
Next question from David Brady, our very own guy from New York, New York. I'm breaking out the Vidiot LZX Analog video synth and trying to get it into the ATEM, converting the composite signal to HDMI with an Osprey AHCH-2. I can get signal to a video assist, but looping out of that to ATEM, nothing. What's the deal?
Alex?
The ATEM is a lot more sensitive to resolutions and frame rates than the video assist is. So it's going to see a lot more than the ATEM can. So like, for instance, the ATEM can't even see 720, I don't think. So anything that or below it won't see. So the 720 will show up in the video assist, but it won't show up in the ATEM. So what I would do is, if you can get a hold of one, I would test it with a true Teranex and just put it in there and convert it up. But you're going to need to not only convert the signal to HDMI, HDMI will also carry a lot of different signals but you need something that's going to convert it. Even a decimator may be able to do the scaling for you. So if you throw a decimator in there, you should be able to get it sorted because it'll always put out a frame rate and resolution no matter what it gets in. And so that's where I would go.
All right. Next question.
Ernest Floyd from Bastrop, Louisiana, USA. I need a recommendation on best international universal power adapter or individual power adapter to purchase.
Rupert.
The best adapters often get seen as the most universal and the most compatible. They're often the most dangerous. So in this case, my recommendations are going to be the ones to avoid, and then anything else above that is probably okay. Ideally, you would want to pick up an adapter in the region you're traveling to. That means that gives it the highest chance of being permitted in that region. I know, like traveling from the US to the UK, for example, I could buy all kinds of variation of adapters here that could get me like shut down if I used them in the UK. They're like so prohibited. Things need to be fused and all kinds of things. So I'll just post a link on a video of the things to avoid, and then you should be okay.
Alex?
Yeah, as far as a universal one, I agree a lot with Rupert, and we've used lots and lots and lots of adapters. The ones that we probably found to be the most successful, if you're going to use a multi-pinned adapter that actually multi-pinned male adapters, which is that you have all little sliders. We found S-Cross, S-K-R-O-S-S is probably the ones that scare us the least. Usually I have one of those in my bag, but I will almost always pick out the countries that I'm gonna use and get a direct conversion from what I'm going. You can get what you do is you get one. It's an international female, so it's got all the different things that you can do. And if you're ever going to go to South Africa, look for the big pins. So international one with the big holes that you need for the big pins. And then what it goes out to is specifically the country that you're in. And if you're going to go to multiple countries, I take multiple adapters, and then what you want is from there, you want I just get one of those or two of those for any country that I'm going to go to. Then I have a power brick, or some kind of, thing that I can now extend all those. I don't try to plug them all in individually. I get a couple of them, so I have primary backup, that kind of thing. But then I have these strips. I get all my strips that I travel with. We talked about this in a previous, I think a day or two ago, and I showed pictures. They're all international plugs on the way in, and then you can also buy, as a note, you can also buy those power strips with international plugs. You can buy them with a C13 input so that they don't come with a cord. They just come with like what you'd see on the back of your computer. what that means is that you can go to any hardware store in the country, anywhere in the world, and there's always C13s that will go into the wall of the country that you live in, and they'll be like $6. And so now you can just go there and you plug it into that, and now it's poof, you got everything there. But do not take your any power supply that's not international overseas. If it has a breaker in it, if it has any kind of switch or breaker, it will not go from one voltage to another generally, unless it's built for international, and then it gets really smoky quickly. So it takes a little while to get it out of the hotel room, just in case. Not that it's ever happened to me. So those are things. But we talked about power supplies or strips a couple days ago on the show.
All right, next question.
And David Brady from New York City is back. At the plant, are multifunctional spaces built on the Everett Nucleus platform for AV over IP. Does anyone have experience, and should I lean into learning it?
Guy.
Yeah, I didn't know what the Evert's nucleus was, so I went and looked it up real quick, and it looks similar to what we were just talking about with the Dante over AV, and it doesn't look like there's a whole lot to learn. It looks like there's, senders and receivers, and so it's just a matter of how much of your brain power that you want to utilize to learning something for a space. If that's your job, then I would be also looking though at NDI. If I was to learn something and get into it, it would be NDI and cloud, AWS. There's lots of cloud practitioner and free stuff that you can learn. That's what I'd be filling my brain with.
Alex?
I will learn anything where you give me a local supply of experts that will explain it to me. So if you have people in the office that are using it, and you have the opportunity to get your hands on it, I would try to absorb the information while I had access.
Rupert?
And anything that is IP based is, any learning of that will just, the more you can learn about IP and networking, if it was some proprietary thing, then it's maybe a bit more of a consideration if you want to spend your time. But so long as it's IP, it's a good skill set of all the underlying networking protocols. It's good stuff.
All right, next question.
And it comes to us from Lois Richter from Davis, California. If you stream to the wrong YouTube place, can you move it later?
Alex?
You can't move it within YouTube, but you can download it. You can either relink, you can just put it in a playlist somewhere else if you want to leave it where it's at. If you want to actually move it to be natively in another account, what you need to do is download it. If you're the owner of that account, there's a download option, so you can just download the video. If you're not the owner of it, or you can't get access to your account, or can't get access to the account, there's a program called Downy. Downy 4 is the new one, I think, and you can throw the URL in and it'll just download it. so you can download it that way. Then from there you can upload it to your account, and it'll re-encode it. It shouldn't really reduce the quality significantly, but it will re-encode it once you upload it.
Rupert?
But if you'd already published your URL, that will change, I guess, once you've downloaded it and re-uploaded it. And if you've got likes or links or comments and stuff, all that stuff will just be lost. So you can move the video content, but you'll lose all the extraneous.
You can't move the event, but you can move the video.
All right, next question.
Next question from Val Neekman of Ontario, Canada. The font is fuzzy connecting Mac Mini to ATEM Mini. HIDPI is not available on ATEM HDMI. Is that a hardware limit, or can we enable HIDPI via settings?
Sorry, all the letters.
I'm trying to...
That's a lot.
I think that this is a resolution issue. It's the problem is the ATEM itself is just 1080p. So they're not going to get any more than 1080p out of it. And now the only question I have, the high DPI is the high dots per inch for the Retina displays. But those are really, even though your Retina display is set to 1080, it's actually working at 4K so that it can do, so the reason it looks odd is because when you're looking at it, it'll be set to 1080, but it's actually using 4K to resolve the edges of things. And so it is, so it will look much more aliased when you put it out to a switcher, because that's the true what 1080 looks like, as opposed to the Apple's version of it, which is basically doubling the resolution and then making it look like 1080. So that's your problem. I don't think there's any good way to output that.
All right. Next question.
From JJ McKenna. What is the best way to keep volunteer Army motivated?
John?
I think strong vision. If you can get people who are really passionate about what you're doing behind, we can see from office hours that we have a bunch of volunteers doing really great stuff, buying into the vision. I think there's a lot of appreciation and people get recognized for the work that they do. And if it's local, food, like that's always helpful.
always the food. Snacks, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, people need to feel like they're making a difference, and they need to feel like they're making progress, and they need to feel like they're, making friends. And so those are all things that you have to kind of think about, and it's hard, and this is a challenge we'll have as we kind of scale up. Is it's just hard for them to manage it in that way, so that everyone gets it all the time, and I think that also when a project slows down a little bit, it's hard because it's just they're doing it for fun, and if it's not fun anymore, then they stop doing it. so that's I think that's often the challenge.
Doug?
Yeah, good craft services. Even though we do pay our people, we always have good craft services, snacks, everything. And even on special days, like sometimes we work on the holidays, and Lana has made little goodie bags, little things that, hey, thanks for giving us your New Year's Day. Here's a little treat. Any kind of thing that you can give back to your workers, paid or unpaid.
Mm-hmm. Mitchell?
Yeah, it's like the producer that comes in. Oh, we've got lunch and craft services. It's pizza. That's the antithesis of motivating an army.
Rupert?
I would also say try and identify the things that might be demotivating and do your best to make sure those things are avoided.
Absolutely. All right. Next question.
Tony Mobley is here from Noonan, Georgia. He's wants to know panelist opinions on the metaverse, I think is what he means there.
No, he means the netaverse.
Sorry. My apologies.
TJ?
I took a look at the link, and I encourage others to also take a look at that link. It's really interesting. It seems that they are taking the basketball game live and allowing you to basically look at the action from any angle that you want to just dream up. There's something there. The edges around the players and stuff are pretty rough, but considering that it seems they're doing this on the fly live and allowing you to change things, it is kind of remarkable.
Cool. All right. Next question.
And it's from J.J. McKenna from San Rafael, California. Is there a facile method to invert, not flip, a second screen in Windows to use it as a teleprompter screen?
Anybody? No? All right.
I'm trying to think. I was just trying to think of a way to invert an image. Yeah, I don't, because I'm talking about. I'm assuming this is inverted from black to white and white to black, and I don't have a solution.
All right. Let's see. Lois?
Well, if you mean invert as in take your thing and turn it upside down and lay it on the thing, why can't you just take the panel and move it?
I don't know. That's a good question. Guy?
Sorry, I had to look up the word facile. I don't know how to do it in Windows. I looked up some software because I have a prompter here that I wound up having because I swapped out the monitor, which the monitor had a built-in flip or invert in it. So decimator. So $295. Maybe not a facile solution, but it works. Throw $295 at it and problem solve.
John?
If you're looking to invert the picture, you can possibly use high contrast mode on Windows. If you're looking to for something else, you like flipping the text around, there are online tools that you can use to send your text into it, and it will flip it around back and forth. Just look for text flipping online.
All right. Next question.
And it's from Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. What is the panel's preferred team management service or app?
Alex.
For work, the one that we've used the most is Slack. And that is a pretty common one. I have to admit that most of my time now, and even a lot of my team events, are all done in Discord, just because I'm there all the time. And I just found it to be a pain when everybody everywhere in my company was using my last company was using Slack. It was easier to just use Slack, but we moved to Discord, or I've moved to Discord, and I try to keep it all there now.
John.
We use Teams. Well, I do like Slack. Corporations often use Teams, and it has some really good features, such as the ability to share files very trivially and a lot of app integrations. It's highly competitive with Slack, although Slack is more popular among independents.
John Wallace.
Yeah, we use Teams as well. Our team really enjoys it, loves it. If you're already part of the Office 365 universe, it's definitely much more affordable than going the Slack Enterprise route. And then Jira for like work management.
Rupert.
I was going to go more the Jira direction, because I was thinking the question related more to maybe like scheduling and managing roles and responsibilities and who's in, who's out, all that kind of stuff. So a bit of more context might be more helpful. But I think the question is wider than just the messaging and interaction type side of things.
John Pugh.
Yeah, to go back to the Jira part, we also use Confluence for team documentation storage and onboarding documents and things like that, which integrates quite well with Jira. If Jira is more of a agile platform for development or work task scheduling. So Confluence is more of a SharePoint-esque type place for you to put documentations and reports, whereas Jira is more for day-to-day work.
Yeah, my company uses Slack for communication, but for assigning big projects and breaking it down, we use Teamwork, and there's a section inside Teamwork called boards, and you can actually literally grab your task and move it to a different board, and it triggers an email to the next person and has to touch it and things like that. And so that I found, when it's set up correctly, is great. I have some team leaders who set it up and it's amazing. And then I have others that set it up and it's like subtasks. So it's so micromanaged with the subtasks that like you can't get forward without having to click like 900 buttons. But when it's done right, I've found it's been really, really helpful. All right, next question.
Next question from J.J. McKenna in San Rafael, California. I like this question. For voice talent, what is your first purchasing consideration when building a new kit?
Mitchell.
I think that you're going to have a very personal relationship with a microphone, some kind of microphone. So you need to pick the right one. And the best way to do that is to try a lot of them if you don't have a very specific one in mind. The next step is, how do you get the most out of that microphone from your voice into your computer, into your editing system? And in some cases, an external device that compresses and processes is the way to do it. Sometimes an internal one is the way to do it. But I would say top number one answer to that question is get a mic that you really like and you feel you can work it really well.
Alex.
Also be conscious of your surroundings. So what your room is like and your mic. But because the mics that sound the best for voiceover, for me, tend to be ones that are very sensitive to echo and reflection and everything else, because you want them to capture the full range of what you're doing. So they tend not to be a radio mic. They tend to be this is a Neumann 102, and it's what I use for voiceovers. As I get closer to it, it gets a little bit, you start losing bits and pieces of what I'm doing. As I back away, you're hearing more of the high frequencies of my voice and raspiness and things like that tend to work really well. And so I think that's the but it's going to pick up everything. You hear my you hear my mouse, you hear everything else, and so you have to kind of think of the environment, the mic, and then there's 1,000 hours of doing voiceovers before you're really going to make any money at it. It's a really fine process to learn to read. So you just read lots of books out loud, and read copy and read other things like that. Getting to a point where you can read and talk at the same time, where your eyes are 3 or 4, 5 words ahead, is really important from a voiceover perspective. I did it for years, and it was really I wasn't very good at it, and I couldn't figure out how someone could walk in. We had talent that would walk in and just literally see it once and read it perfectly with every, like with every whatever, and then leave. And but that's because they were sometimes. I realized after a while that they were a line ahead. Like they were literally looking a line ahead, and their voice was just following along after that. But that's it. But you just need to know that it's going to take time to get good at little subtle things in how you do your voice. It's how you say something. I use an expression I'm not going to use when we stream, but that's how we talked about it. But how you say words is really important.
Rupert?
Exactly. I was going to say for remote talent, first consideration is the environment. Where are they? What's their surroundings? How are we going to manage that? And that would also extend into scheduling. What's the scheduling in their environment? What day does the trash come? What are the timings of all the extraneous noises? And when can we work together in a quiet, controlled environment, and what that pipeline between us is going to be.
All right. Next. Well, sorry. Are we going to?
Maybe one more.
One more? Okay. We'll go to our last question for today. Mitchell.
Last question, Junior Grant from New York. What's the panel's experience using the Luna display with PCs or tablets?
John Pewitt.
So I've got a Luna display. I haven't used it with a Windows-based system, but I have used it with my Mac, and I find it better and my iPad, and I find it better than the Apple version. The connection just seems to be more reliable and more stable than extending the desktop with my Mac, and it also doesn't use the Wi-Fi, so I don't have dropouts as much as I do whenever I do it with the Apple solution. I'm assuming because of the quality that the company's put out that working with Windows would be very similar, and I might test it later today.
Alex?
Yeah, I used it early on and had trouble with it. so I stopped using it, but I think it's probably gotten a lot better. But my experience when it asked the experience was not good. I just couldn't pair it a lot. But I, of course, got it right when it came out at the beginning.
All right. So that was our last question. Now we can say goodbye to YouTube. Thank you for joining us. We'll